Mr. Romano, did you prosecute anyone related to January 6th for engaging in an insurrection?
No, Congresswoman.
I didn't think so. So Mr. Raskin's statement that someone was a convicted insurrectionist is actually inaccurate. Isn't that correct?
I wouldn't say it's inaccurate. Well, a convicted insurrectionist.
She wasn't a convicted insurrectionist, was she?
Would the gentlelady yield?
No, I will not. Mr. Romano.
Do you accept seditious conspiracy as insurrection?
Mr. Romano, I will reclaim my time. Mr. Romano, did you prosecute anyone for engaging in an insurrection related to January 6th?
For the crime of insurrection?
You did not, did
No.
you? This select subcommittee is committed to undertaking the investigation that the first select committee never conducted. How did this security failure on January 6th happen, and how do we ensure it does not happen again? Since the pipe bomb split the USCP posture and thereby facilitated the breach of the Capitol, we must begin with this issue. My first question is, why did a new team under Director Patel in just 2 months do what the FBI failed to do over 4 years with the exact same evidence? The answer appears to be a failure from the very start of the FBI's response. As a subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee that oversees the DOJ and FBI, it necessitates that we begin right here. According to what we have been led to believe, the pipe bombs were placed outside the RNC and DNC on the evening of January 5th. They allegedly sat there undetected for 17 hours before the device behind the RNC was discovered at approximately 12:38 p.m., with the device at the DNC immediately discovered thereafter at 1:05 p.m. The pipe bomb outside the RNC was discovered by Carlin Younger, who lived near the RNC and discovered the pipe bomb in the unmarked alley between the Capitol Hill Club and RNC while doing her laundry. She alerted the RNC security, who had then alerted the authorities. Oddly enough, no one from the FBI contacted Ms. Younger. 2 days later, on January 8th, Ms. Younger had to proactively contact the FBI through an online tip to identify herself as the person who discovered the pipe bomb and to offer her assistance with the case because she had not yet been contacted by the FBI. Ms. Nantz, or Mr. Nantz, would you agree that it would be standard operating procedure and good investigative practice to interview all of the eyewitnesses?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be standard practice to make sure that you cast a broad enough net so that you're interviewing any witness that could possibly provide information with regard to the progress of the investigation.
Well, can you think of any reason as to why the FBI did not seek to immediately speak to the person who actually found the bomb?
Well, no, that's a problem. That's a question that needs to be answered. And, you know, does it go to lack of resources? I mean, that's still very, very early. So I find that to be extremely problematic.
Well, in her online tip, Ms. Younger stated, quote, "I can confirm that the device must have been placed between 12 p.m. and 12:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on January 6th, end quote, because it was not there when she first passed the area around 12 p.m. So when was the bomb actually placed and by whom? The FBI finally interviewed Ms. Younger 3 days later on January 11th, and it confirmed her testimony that the device outside the RNC was not there before 12 p.m. on January 6th. This leads us to 3 significant data points. First, the bombs had kitchen timers for 60 minutes. Second, the witness who first discovered the bomb noted it was not there before noon, about 60 minutes before the meeting of Congress. And third, if in fact the bombs were placed the night of the 5th, they sat there for 17 hours in a highly trafficked area, undisguised, without detection, until the most crucial time for security that day, which was when Congress was voting to certify the election. Mr. Nantz, what should the FBI have done with this contradicting evidence?
Well, the Bureau should have run that all to ground. I mean, every resource should have been made available to make sure that, that those questions got answered, and that simply did not happen. And I think that had to do with a less than ideal leadership posture.
Well, I think that's the understatement of the century, Mr. Nantz, but I appreciate your remarks on that. Both devices were largely undisguised and visible along heavily trafficked areas, yet they allegedly lay undiscovered for 17 hours, a point Ms. Younger disputes. And again, which oddly enough, they were not detected by the Secret Service bomb sweeps at the DNC before the arrival of then Vice President-elect Harris that very morning. Does the fact that these devices were not detected for 17 hours raise any questions for you?
Well, of course, I think it does for everybody. You know, though the January 6th investigation was just beginning, and I suppose you could make an argument that resources were stretched thin, the gravity of the placement of these, where these pipe bombs were placed, suggests that that should have received, at least the same or equivalent amount of resources at the broader J6 investigation.
Well, then I appreciate not only did it not receive the attention, the January 6th committee entirely ignored the placement of those bombs, which tells you that they had an agenda that they pursued that had nothing to do with what actually happened on January 6th. With that, I yield back. Ranking member indicated that the first lesson that you teach lawyers is you better bring the evidence with you. But another lesson that we learn is that you should also know the elements of the crime and the relevant statute if you're going to claim that somebody committed a crime. It's a pretty slimy tactic to use the word insurrection over and over and over and over and over again, and yet try to hide the fact that the gentleman who's sitting here before us today, who was responsible for prosecuting many of the people on January 6th, never once charged anybody with violating 18 U.S.C. section 2383. You never charged anybody with violating that statute. You never convicted anybody with violating that statute. So sitting here and using that word over and over again means absolutely nothing. We are here today focusing on the pipe bomb because of what happened that day. It clearly played a pivotal role in facilitating the breach of the Capitol, and we need to get to the bottom of what happened there. These devices were discovered outside the RNC and DNC within 20 minutes of the joint session, and the U.S. Capitol Police were forced to defy the forces while a crowd of protesters moved towards the Capitol. The U.S. Capitol Police was not dealing with just the force division, but also with the fact that 500 bike racks had been removed the night before. Who ordered the removal of the 500 bike racks and why? The staff of the architect of the Capitol testified that the evening of January 5th, roughly around the time the pipe bombs were allegedly planted, the order came down to remove 500 bike racks from around the Capitol. Mr. Pajota, can bike racks help law enforcement with crowd control and deterrence?
Absolutely. They form a physical barrier between the crowd and a protected location, or they can be used to help funnel a crowd to or from a location.
Well, can they also serve as a visual cue for non-law enforcement personnel about what lines they are not allowed to cross? And could removing them spell legal jeopardy for protesters who cannot identify what is the line of trespass?
It creates ambiguity for the public. They don't know where those barriers are.
And did this actually result in legal jeopardy for many of the people who were on the Capitol grounds on January 6th?
It ended up that way.
Okay. According to the Select January 6th Committee's final report, quote, at 1:28 p.m., the U.S. Capitol Police requested the AOC to deliver 400 additional bike racks to the East Front to serve as protective barriers, even though rioters were using bike racks as weapons. The pipe bomb discovery at the DNC prevented the AOC from delivering them, end quote. Clearly, the Capitol Police viewed the bike racks as a necessary tool for that day, and their removal is absolutely baffling. And this subcommittee should focus on identifying who gave that order, why, when, who was involved. We need to get to the bottom of this. And the previous January 6th committee didn't look into it. They're not the ones who actually investigated what happened here and why. This statement is also clear that the impacts of the pipe bombs continue to be felt by the U.S. Capitol Police officers responding to the incident. And Mr. Pajota, does this raise even more questions about why the Ray FBI did not take this pipe bomb investigation seriously?
The Ray FBI did not prioritize this investigation. Again, I think their resources and their attention was split into the other events of January 6th. And over time, what we saw was I would say, a weak or inept case management approach where this investigation eventually stalled.
Okay. Mr. Especial, do you have anything that you would like to briefly add to the discussion today?
I think that probably the biggest takeaway in all of this is that there are 1,600 American citizens that were baited into a trespass trap to a great extent. Yes, certainly, absolutely, some of them were violent, and investigations and prosecutions were warranted. But I have an estimate that it was almost $1 billion that was spent on prosecuting American citizens. It's a lot of money that we spent on trying to prosecute patriotic American citizens. And then you add on top of that the thousands of American citizens that, like myself, that were also weaponized against in order for deterrence purposes, all the tactical resources. It was really a terror campaign. I would refer you to the National Counterterrorism reports available on my website, and it's highlighted where they want an FBI domestic terrorism statute, quote, for deterrence purposes. They want to be able to silence free speech. They did that with all of this. And, the cause, bottom line is 51 intelligence officers memo, Hunter Biden laptop. It's all these things where the American citizens that showed up that day were at their wits' end on having faith in their government. And they were vulnerable. As I warned, they were vulnerable.
Well, and I think Hunter Biden is a good name to bring forward when you talk to with Mr. Romano here when we talk about the appropriateness of pardons. Mr. Nantz, do you have anything to very briefly add?
I think one of the biggest things that the American people need to take away from this is the understanding that how dangerous narrative-led investigations can be. Because I think what we have going on here in large measure are narratives driven by the Biden White House through the Garland DOJ, and these are, of course, communications happening, headquarters to headquarters. And Director Wray, as any leader can present the commander's intent without explicitly doing so. So if he's getting communications from his boss, who is the Attorney General, that the narrative needs to be, we need to prioritize and stick with the J6 insurrection narrative, the pipe bomber narrative, or the pipe bomber investigation, in my opinion, was deprioritized because of that narrative coming from potentially the White House.
Well, I appreciate your testimony. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to expose this. With that, I yield back.